Hi guys, today I'm going to run through a Grade 5 ABRSM practice exam paper. This video is aimed at those of you that are probably wanting to take the exam soon and you just want to sort of go through, revise, maybe get some fresh perspective on how to answer some of the questions. If you don't want to go through the whole test, you can skip to specific topics. I've added in the description below some shortcuts for you to just fast forward to whichever topic it might be that you want to go through. Before we get started, I'll just let you know that I actually got this paper from the ABRSM website. It's free to download. If you wanted to go ahead and get that yourself, you can download it as a PDF file direct from their website. Again, I'll pop the link in the description below for this one. Before you do any theory exam, whether it's grade 1 or grade 5 or whatever, it's probably a good idea to write down some stuff at the very beginning of the test before you even attempt any question. Just get down as much of the information that you can, that you remember, to help you out during the questions so that you don't have to keep sort of racking your brains for the info and you can just go straight to your sheet and go from there. So the first thing, probably the most important thing to get down, is the keys information. So this is all the keys, major and minor, for both flats and sharps, and the order that the sharps and the flats go in as well. And I know this looks pretty full on at first, but it's actually really easy to draw out and it really doesn't take long. It takes like 2 minutes when you know what you're doing. If you want to know how to do this yourself, check out my other video on remembering keys and scales. Or if you have your own way of remembering all of the keys and scales, that's fine, whatever works for you. Some of the things to write out, you've got the pyramid for the rhythms. You have all of your technical names for all of the notes in the scale. And obviously, last but not least, some kind of a little keyboard or piano or whatever. This is so handy just for like even just counting up semitones, which happens a lot in questions. You have to like think, what is a semitone higher, 2 semitones higher, and whatnot, so you can just navigate your way around that nicely. Right, let's get started. Rhythms first, and it seems like rhythm is actually one of the hardest topics to wrap your head around, and I think it's just because there are so many different combinations of notes that you can have, so there's so many different ways that a question can present itself to you. But there's a few little things you can do. First thing I like to do now, quite a common thing is people will start adding these up. That's like the go-to thing that everybody seems to do, just start adding it up, and they're like 1 beat, 1.5 beats, and so on. But sometimes there'll be 2 options here that add up to the same amount, so you can't always narrow it down just by adding the notes up. What you should do first is check the grouping if you can. Check for any groups that are not by any rests either side. So what I mean by that is notes that are beamed together like this. This is a nice visual sort of representation of a group right here, and we know that it is a group because either side of it there are quavers that are not joined to it. They could be if they were in the group, but they're not. So that's telling me that this right here is a group. And the reason I say don't circle a group that's next to a rest, because if there was a rest right here instead of a note, then we don't know that that rest is part of that group or not. So make sure if you do circle a group, just to have a look at it, it's not by a rest. So once you've done that, you can have a look at it and see what does it add up to inside this group. So I see a quaver there, quaver there, quaver there. So this group is worth 3 quavers. And if you're familiar with the different types of time signatures, you'll know that there are 2 categories, 2 main categories. You've got simple time and compound time. Simple time, they're usually grouped evenly, and in compound time, they usually have odd groups. So this, to me, this is kind of a clue right here that this is going to be some kind of a compound time signature. Okay, so I could probably go ahead and just eliminate this 4/4 time signature right here, because obviously that's simple time. Okay, if you do see anything that is irregular, like 7 over 8, 5 over 4, anything that's not divisible by 2 or by 3, don't eliminate that one, because they have both. They have groups of 2 and groups of 3 in. So you're only eliminating the obvious simple times or compound times if you find a group that has like 3 in it or 2 in it. Alright then, so then to me then, this is looking like a 9/8 because of the group of 3. But I would go ahead and add everything up just to make sure at the end. So 9/8 is obviously 9 quavers. We've just found that we have 3 here. And then we'll see if we've got another 6. Well, there's a quaver, there's a quaver, there's a quaver. So there's our next group of 3 there. And then at the beginning, quaver, quaver, quaver. Okay, so yeah, I was right, 9/8. Okay, let's have a look over here. This is pretty cool. If you see anything awful like this, where you've got double dots and like these extra sticky out lines, instead of trying to remember or even trying to figure out what the heck this is worth, if you have the same amount of dots as you do extra sticky out lines, just imagine that they're not there. They don't exist. So that's nice. This just adds up to a crotchet. So there's a nice group that I can see right there. Maybe I'll ignore that group for now. Let's just have a look at maybe this one. This one looks a bit nicer to deal with. So I can see that I've got semiquaver, so I've got quarter, quarter, half. So this is looking like another crotchet. So I've picked 2 groups out here. I've noticed that they are crotchet groups. So out of these options, it's not going to be the compound time group, because as we just saw in the first question, they have groups of 3 in, so I can narrow it down a little bit there. And then I just got the option of, is it 4 crotchets or is it 5 crotchets in this bar? It just helps a little bit. Okay, so there's another crotchet, and if we added this up, we'd see it adds up to a crotchet. So we do have 4. Okay, so this is actually a really good bunch of questions, because here we've got a group of 3 in the time of 2, it's a triplet. So this is a crotchet. I'll draw that there. We've got another crotchet, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have crotchets all the way through necessarily. So let's have a look. We can't really narrow any down apart from 6/8. 6/8 because we haven't got any groups of 3 quavers here. So that's impossible. So we've got 2 options. It's either 5/8 or 7/8. Just because you have crotchet groups doesn't mean you're going to have a crotchet time signature like 4/4. Especially when there are irregular time signatures knocking about like 7/8 and 5/8. So 2 crotchets. So far I've got 2 crotchets, or 4 quavers, you could say. How many left then if the only options that I have are quavers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7. And now we can see that we do have a mixture. We've got like a group of 3 quavers over here, followed by like almost 2 groups of 2. Yeah, so that's what happens in 7/8, isn't it? You have like a group of 3 followed by a group of 4, or the other way around, a group of 4 followed by a group of 3 typically. One really good example of this is Pink Floyd's Money. We check that out, see if you can count it. When the music kicks in, you can really hear it going like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, check it out. It's pretty cool. Question 1.2, compound time and simple time. This is just going to ask you, has this been written out correctly in simple time? Which one is correct of these 3? Or the other way, it might say simple time to compound time. Either way, there's only 3 things that can happen here. Either each group will have added or removed a triplet, a duplet, or a dot. So essentially, when we're going from simple to compound time, everything will be made smaller, because compound time are worth groups of 3, simple time are worth groups of 2 typically. So yeah, we're going smaller here. So in order to do that, each of these groups will have needed to add a triplet. But all that's happening is just adding or removing one of these 3 things. No matter which way you're going, you'll see a change of one of those things for each group. So there's my 4 groups in 12/8. So here, to make this worth 2, it's just got to have added a triplet. It's worth 3 quavers at the moment. If we add a triplet, it's worth 2. So that's been done correctly for all 3 options. We can't narrow it down based off this first group just yet. The second group, it's worth 3 quavers. To be made worth 2, we've got to add a triplet. So the top 2 are correct, but the bottom one is just the same. So for any groups that you see that are exactly the same, you can narrow that down, because that would be incorrect. So we've narrowed it down to 2 options now. The third group, both of these have added a triplet, so that's correct so far. And the last group, it's a dotted crotchet, that is worth 3 quavers as well. To make it worth 2 quavers, we need to remove that dot. See how that's just the same? So that's not right. It's kind of like spot the difference really, if you know what you're looking for. So that's not right either. So here it is. Question 1.3 is all to do with time values. So just basically like how many crotchets can you fit into a semi-breve, but kind of a little bit harder. So 6/16 is basically just 6 semiquavers, isn't it? 6 of those. And it wants to know, in 6/16, there are so many dotted quaver beats in a bar. Bit of a weird wording, but essentially it's just asking you how many dotted quavers can you fit into 6 semiquavers. So how many of these fit into 6 semiquavers? A bit weird, but yeah, there are 3 semiquavers in a dotted quaver, so 2 of those will fit into that. A breve, so a breve is an 8-beat note, looks like that, is equal to how many crotchets? 8. Right. Question 1.4, tick one box to show which bar is grouped correctly. Right, so first step, check your time signature, 9/4. 9/4 is a compound time signature with 3 groups of 3 crotchets in it. So we should be able to see those 3 groups somehow. Ties are an indication of a group beginning and ending. So that's telling me there that that's kind of, if I just circle that to show you, that should be one group. The tie is there because it takes this note and carries it into the next group so that nothing is overlapped. So, okay, let's see. All 3 of these have that. So the first group is 3 crotchets. It's been done correct. In the next group, should add up to 3 crotchets. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3. And we have another tie there. In this case, there's been ties across every group. It's not always the case, but they are good little indications of where they are. So I can see my 3 individual crotchet groups here. 3 crotchet groups. That looks okay to me, but let's just check the others. Crotchet, crotchet, and then I was supposed to have another crotchet in this group because it's supposed to be a 3 crotchet group, but we've got a 4-beat note at the very end, and that in itself is wrong because one group can only possibly add up to 3 anyway, so this kind of overlaps the 2 groups. 3 beats of it is supposed to be in that group, 1 beat of it is supposed to be over there, so we can narrow it down and say that that is not right. Over here, what was wrong with this one was, yeah, the ending was done correctly. It's very, well, it's the same as up here. That was fine. But this group, in here, if you have notes with tails that are inside a group, they should just be beamed together. There's no need to break that grouping up there. So that's why that one was wrong. So the answer was the top one. Question 1.5, rests. There are loads of rules about rests and it can become a little bit of a headache, but one thing you don't want to do here is start just adding everything up to see if everything adds up correctly. That's a grade 1 and a grade 2 approach. For grade 5, there's more to it than that. It has to be grouped correctly as well as add up correctly. So first step, check your time signature and say it to yourself, like 3/4 is 3 crotchet beats. I'm looking for 3 crotchet beats here. 3 times crotchet. So let's look at the first bar. Let's kind of zoom in here. Right, here's a crotchet. We've got a crotchet at the end, and so I'm left with this little bit in the middle. I have to decide if this has been done right or wrong. Sometimes it looks unnecessary, like 2 rests here. Well, this is in the same group. Surely these rests can just be simplified into 1 rest. However, if a part of your bar is complete, only a part of it, then I need to finish it off in a certain way. So this is a semiquaver. I'm not allowed to follow this note with a rest that is bigger than it. I have to follow it, I have to sort of round it up to the nearest next highest note. So in this case, if this is a quarter, I need another quarter to take this up to a half first. Then I can complete my group there. So this is actually right. Quarter, round it up with a quarter, finish the whole group off with the final half. So that needs to tick. Okay, next we have, again, we'll circle the groups that we can see. Crotchet groups, remember. Okay, so there's a crotchet. This is a bit weird. We have a triplet sign over these 2 things here, so we can deal with that in a minute. Let's just have a look. This rest here looks okay because that adds up to a crotchet there. That's okay, but the problem is in here. If you know about triplets, you'll know that inside a triplet the whole thing has to be sort of divisible by 3 of something. So you'll have either a triplet that adds up to 3 quavers, 3 semiquavers, 3 crotchets, whatever it is. But here we've got 1 and a quarter. So that's just sort of a bit weird. Like that's not something you'll usually see. It doesn't really divide by 3. At least I don't think it does off the top of my head. But I know that rest, in order to make this entire triplet worth a crotchet, it's supposed to be a triplet of quavers in order to make that a crotchet. So that shouldn't be a semiquaver, it should be a quaver. So that one was wrong. Last one, my bar line was there, I kind of wrote over that, but alright. First one, we got a crotchet there, we have a crotchet rest there. If you're missing a whole crotchet beat, you're allowed to put 1 crotchet to simplify. And then in the final group, 3 semiquavers plus a semiquaver rest. 3 quarters plus a quarter, that's fine. Yeah. Question 2, pitch. This is much nicer than the rhythm section. You just need to know your different clefs, and obviously where middle C is on all of those clefs will really help you out. So middle C for this first question is it's a tenor clef. Points to where middle C is right there, and that can help you count down to this note to name it. So there is actually a little tip I can give you here for counting backwards down a stave. If you know where C is, then all of the notes from there until the next C are just going to spell out bag fed. I know that seems a bit weird, but that's what it spells, and it helps me when counting backwards, because counting up is a different story. You're just following the alphabet upwards, but down, if you just think bag fed, let me zoom in. B-A-G-F-E-D, bag fed, and then you're on C again, and then the bag fed thing starts again, B-A. So that's an A. Bag fed. Okay. 2.2, enharmonic equivalent, right? Enharmonic equivalent, you probably know, is the same name, same note with a different name. For example, C sharp is the same as D flat. So we have to pick, this is an E, pick a note that is an E but with a different sort of name, with a different symbol. So E, we have D sharp, well that's not it because that's a different note, F flat, and a normal F. So F and D sharp, no, but F flat is one semitone lower. If we just take a look at the little piano thingy, there is our E just there. And so F, if we flatten it, make it one step lower, it is just E. Okay, so that is that one. F flat is E. Question 2.3 is going to be about transposing, and all of this waffle, you can just ignore it. Just focus on how much you need to be moving down by, so in this case a minor third, and whether it is up or down, so which direction you're moving and by how far. So there are only ever 3 intervals that you'll need to be moving up or down by. A minor third is one of them. A major second is another one. And the last one, perfect fifth, it might say that. Can't write, pretend that says perfect. Okay, and all you need to remember, forget intervals, you don't have to think intervals here. You can just remember that a major second is 2 semitones. I remember this because it's in the name, second has a 2 in it. Minor third, 3 semitones. And then finally perfect fifth, unfortunately it's not 5 semitones, but it's 7, right? So if you could remember this, you can figure out any transposing question with this information. So, first step, key signature. We have to check, is this key signature transposed correctly into this one? So, figure out what that is first of all. You can use the major key for each of these. So, this is 2 sharps. The key is D major. So, I need to transpose down by a minor third, which is 3 semitones, from this note, from this key. So the key is D, so I'm moving down 3 semitones from D. Right, 3 semitones from D. There's my D. 1 semitone takes me there. 2, 3. Should be landing on a B then here. So B should be my new key signature. So I'm going to write B, that should be what it is here, but let's check. 4 sharps is actually the key signature for E major. If it was B major, there should be another sharp here. B major has 5 sharps in it, so that is incorrect. Then what you can do is, again, minor third is the distance that we're moving by, 3 semitones. I would just make a note of this note, it's a D. Always check your key signature, in case it's not a D, in case it's a D sharp. But we have a D, and we've got a B. So we need to check these 2 notes. Are these 2 3 semitones away from one another? Has this been transposed down by a minor third by 3 semitones? I already forgot what it was. D to B. Okay, so D. Oh well, that's the same as before. D, 1, 2, 3. 3 semitones. It is a B. Already established that. Yeah. Nice. B flat to G. Those are my 2 next notes to check. And you can just go ahead and do this for every single one. B flat to G. There's my B flat. 1, 2, 3 steps down is G. So that was okay. So, yep. A to F. A to F. A. 1, 2, 3. Well, I've landed on an F sharp here. F would be 4 semitones away. So this particular one hasn't been done correctly. Last one, E to C sharp. This note was affected by the key signature. Always check that. E to C sharp. There's my E. and then we go 1, 2, 3 semitones. It is a C sharp. Okay. Correct. So like I said, the process is exactly the same whether it says up or down. You just move up instead of down. Minor third was 3 semitones, but if it said major second, you would just be doing the same thing but with 2 semitones. And if it was a perfect fifth, you have a bit further to count, but it's just 7 semitones. Question 2.4, we're just comparing each of these different clefs and the notes in them, whether they are at the same pitch or not, or if they're an octave higher or an octave lower. So, best bet, think about where middle C is for each of these. And then it's much easier to compare. You can see the distance, that there's your point of reference for each one. A and B are the same pitch. Nope, because that's above the red line, that's below the red line. False. B is an octave lower than C. Well, yep, it is actually, because if we like that, if you took it lower down by an octave, it would be about here, and that's what that seems to be. So that's okay. C is an octave higher than A. Nope, they're exactly the same. They're at the same pitch, same distance away from middle C. So that's false. Question 3, keys and scales next. So this is where that key signature grid that I showed you earlier will come in handy. Like I said, if you do have your own way of remembering the keys, that's fine, but in this video I'll keep referring back to this thing. Right. So first step is to establish what this even has in it. B major, it's asking us about. So it is, in this chart, look for B, it's there, B major, and it has these sharps, F, C, G, D, and A, and in that order. That's important, the order of them. F, C, G, D, A. Okay. Right then, so before you even begin to check the placement of these things on the stave for each one, there are a few things that you can look out for first to narrow it down. There's always a way to do that. So first things first, the distance between the first and the second sharp in any clef or flats, this applies to flats and sharps, they can never be a third away. Like, these are far too close. If you count, including the first note, 1, 2, 3, these are just a third. 1, 2, 3. So that can't happen. They need to be a minimum of 4 away or 5 tops. It's either 4 or 5. Never less, never more than that. So that one's wrong straight away. Don't even need to check it. Same thing has happened here. These two are a third apart. It's wrong. So here are my choices, and I've got lovely, great, alto and tenor. Okay, so let's have a look at this one first. Okay, so you could go through each of these and just go like, is that F? Is that C? Is that G? And so far we're okay. D, A. They are those notes, right? All of those are those notes, but that doesn't mean that it's correct, because the placement of these actually matters. So you should familiarize yourself with the pattern of what these things actually look like, because it's quite often the same across all the different clefs. That should be down here for it to be correct. The pattern of the sharps is actually like a group of 2, then like a group of 3 like this. So the next sharp is like down here, and the more you do it, the more you just get familiar with that. It's the same for the sharps across the alto, the treble, the bass. That pattern is across all of them. But in the tenor, a little different. The sharp starts at the bottom, and that is actually okay. So this might look weird to those of you that are used to treble and bass clef, maybe even alto clef, for a sharp to begin at the bottom in the key signature. This might look wrong to you, but actually that's right for the tenor clef. So that's an F, C, G, D, and A. That's fine. And in the sharps for the tenor clef, they do just continue in this way. They kind of like have this pattern of, like, they just look like they're going upwards like that. Bit different. Right, E flat minor. So let's have a look at our chart. E flat minor. It's given us all the good ones here, isn't it? 5 sharps followed by 6 flats. Thanks. Okay, E flat minor, 6 flats, and the order is B, E, A, D, G, and then C. Everything except F, basically. Right, let's have a look. Again, let's do what we did before. Let's check if any of them are too close together. Right here, those two are far too close together. It's wrong. These two are too close together. Wrong. 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 You can narrow it down sometimes without even having to check. Done. Question 3.3. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of investigative work here. We have F sharp, and that one's nice. G major. Sometimes it's easy peasy if they give you a major one. F sharp is just 1 sharp in the key signature. We know G major. You probably definitely are going to know that by now. If you do, if that doesn't jump out at you as the correct answer, you're probably really going to struggle with this section. So I would definitely go and revise this if that's the case. A sharp is in the next one. Just write them down if there are a few. A sharp, F sharp. Check your clef as well, because so many times the people will go, ooh, F sharp, and they'll be in treble clef mode in their head. But yeah, A sharp, F sharp, C sharp. And then after you've gathered your sharps or your flats, try putting them in some kind of order that you might see them if they were in a key signature. So you know that F sharp is meant to go first. You know that C sharp goes next. But then A sharp, in order to have A sharp, you're supposed to have a G sharp, a D sharp, then A sharp. So this registers to me as like a little bit weird. Maybe this isn't part of our key signature information. This is looking like a raised 7th to do with minor keys. So if you see something like this, you probably straight away just go, well, it can't be major because that doesn't exist in major keys, raised 7ths. You could go through and check the key signatures for each one and see if these belong in any of them. That's another option, like sort of a process of elimination. But that right there is a clue. It's a raised 7th. And then what you can do, either check your key signature for both of these and sort of like see if the notes are there, or go, well, if that's a raised 7th, in what scale is A the 7th note in? And you'd find that, well, the 7th note in F sharp minor or in an F scale, the note before F is the 7th, it would be E. So that can't be that one. The raised 7th in a B scale would be A. A is the note before B, and the 7th note is the note before your tonic or whatever. So it must be B minor. And you could always just write the scale out very quickly to check B, C, D, E, F, G. Just write B to B dead quick and go, yeah, 7th note is A. You could even pop your key signature on. You could do all of this. B major, B minor. Did I say major before? Who knows? B minor has F sharp and C sharp in it. And yeah, in order to make this a harmonic minor, for example, the A would become a sharp. So this was B minor. Okay, last we have a G sharp there, D sharp, and an F sharp, and a C sharp. And if we pop these in order, we'll see that it's F, then C, then G, then D. So nothing seems weird here. We have 4 sharps. We are able to arrange them into the order that you'd see them in a key signature. So this appears to probably be just a major key then. So the major key that has these 4 sharps in, E major. And I know that minor keys have the same key signature as major keys sometimes, but in these questions for the grade 5 exam, a minor key will always present itself with a raised note in it, a raised 6th or a raised 7th or both. It would never just have the notes from the key signature like this. If it does only have key sig notes, it must be major. Sometimes you will see a mixture of sharps and flats, like it, let's just say, I'm not saying that this is a particular key, because this might just be a nonsense key now, I'm just adding things on to show you. If you see a mixture of sharps and flats, then you can straight away say it can't be a major key as well, because major keys only have flats or sharps, they don't have both. So if that happened, get rid of your major options straight away. Question 3.4, they're going to be asking you about some kind of a scale, and it's either going to be descending or ascending. It might be a major or any of the minor types. Your best bet here is to write down the scale, just like we did before, just writing like B to B because it's a B scale. Then adding the key signature notes is your next step. So this is a B flat minor scale. It's a harmonic, but let's just focus on the fact that it's B flat minor first. So minor, B flat, and then check your flats to see what's in it. B, E, A, D, and G. So I'm just going to go ahead. Well, instead of thinking I've got to add all those flats on, I'm just going to go, right, I'm going to add flats onto everything apart from these two. So I focus on what it's not rather than what it is. C and F are left blank, everything else is flat. And then I'll go, right, now I can focus on the fact that it's harmonic. And I know that harmonic scales have raised 7th notes. So I'm going to raise this 7th. When you raise a flat, it just becomes a natural. Okay, which might look like a natural in a piece of music, or it might just be left without a symbol on it as well, which would also mean it was a natural. So then, once I've done that, I can just cross-reference all of this with this scale here. Obviously, this scale has been drawn descending, so I have to make sure that when I'm checking my first note, it's not with this first note, because that's the end of the scale and it's coming back down this way like this. So either start here and work your way up, making sure that you start there, or go the other way. Just keep that in mind. So B flat, yep, C, D flat, E flat, F, G flat is my next note, Y should be a G flat, A natural. Like I said, you don't need to have the natural sign for it to be for just a normal A, that's okay. And then B flat was last. Okay, so we're done. Okay, question 3.5 next, and this one, it does take a little bit more sort of investigating to find out the right answer. It's not necessarily going to jump out at you. So yeah, it can be a bit of a headache, but if you just go ahead and write down what this first note would be for each of these clefs first of all. So this would, if it was treble clef, that note would be a B. If this was bass clef, this note would be D. If it was alto clef, F, D, C. It's going to be a C. Took me a minute then. And then tenor clef, this note would be an A. Okay, so then you have to go, right, it's either B minor, D minor, C minor, or A minor. And if you know your scales, like for me on the piano, I kind of know where some of the, like straight away to look at where some of the sharps and flats land on my scales, because the piano is a really nice visual sort of representation of that. But if you don't have that, and we just, you know, what if it's a really hard scale, we're just going to have a look at it and write the scale for each one. If this was B minor, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, we can just test it out. Does B minor have a G flat in it? No, it's not that one. If it was D minor, D, E, F, G, C, D. Does D minor have a B flat in it? Yes, it does. And then you can check, well, what about the C sharp? Well, that, as we know, is just a raised seventh in a minor scale. This just says to form minor scales. It could be a natural minor, it could be a melodic or a harmonic. So in this case, we found that this is a little harmonic scale here in D, and that's correct. So you don't have to always test them all, but yeah, we've got a bass clef one. So then here, this would be, if we were in treble clef, this would be D sharp. Instead of writing them all on, I could probably save myself a job if it doesn't end up being tenor or alto. I'll just work these out one by one. So if it was D sharp, D, E, F, G, B, C, D. Okay, let's check. Now that is quite a lot to remember, so I'm going to use my chart for this one. So the only one that shouldn't be a sharp is a B. So if that was D sharp minor, alright, this one wouldn't be a B sharp, and it would definitely have Fs and G sharps in it, so it can't be the treble clef option. Unfortunately, we'll have to move on and try it for the bass clef. F sharp minor it would be if it was bass clef. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. F sharp minor, what does that have in it? F sharp minor, F, C and G sharp. F, C, G, F, C, G. Right, we have F, C and G and F. So F, G, C. They're all okay. A and the B aren't sharp, so that's okay. Now these two are looking like sharps, but remember, in minor scales, the sixth and the seventh can be raised. In this case, it's a melodic minor because they are both raised, and that is actually okay. So, yep, another bass clef by the looks of it. Next question, if this was treble clef, that would be a G. I'm going to this note now because this is the bottom of my scale. I'm descending. So I'm starting here, G. Let's test this out. G, I've got to go backwards. So G, I'm counting up the scale. It's the same thing, just going backwards. Okay, so does G minor have B flats and E flats in it? G minor, B flats and E flats. So let's take another look. If in this case you notice there isn't any extra raised notes, and that's because in a minor scale, in a melodic minor scale, when melodic minor scales are descending, they don't have any raised notes in them. It's only the notes from the key signature. So yeah, B flat and E flat works out in this one, and we have a treble clef. So this one wasn't too mean. These questions can be a little tricky. Sometimes you have to really work them all out from left to right, and you end up with some altos or tenor clefs as your answer, but this was okay. We ended up with two basses and a treble. That was quite nice, but that's the approach anyway. By all means, if anyone has any better ways to do any of these questions, please do comment below and tell me your tips and tricks. I would appreciate it. Chromatic scales next. A few rules about chromatic scales. First step, you're not allowed to have 3 notes on the same line or gap. So if you do spot like 3 consecutive notes all on the same gap or line, you could just go, right, that's incorrect. And I guess it's because scales are supposed to look like they're moving in a direction up or down, but if 3 notes were just all on the same line all of a sudden, it might just sort of interrupt that flow, and it would just sort of be like straight for a second and it would go back up again. It's the only reason I can think of. They want to keep it nice and uniform. Okay, so here if we don't spot that, we can't say that it's been incorrectly written out. That sometimes is the first step. Look for 3 notes, and then if you don't spot that, then you do have to sort of have a look through every note and just sort of check them all. One thing is, they have to start and finish on the same note. So if this is a C, and it's supposed to be a C scale, it should finish on a C, and not like, even if it was written as like a B sharp, that would be a B sharp, terribly drawn, but B sharp. Even though a B sharp is a C, technically, if you play it on the piano, it looks like you're playing a C, but you're not allowed to have it written as a B sharp. If it's a scale like this, it's supposed to finish on a C, like that. So that's okay still. So then let's just go through this and check that all the notes are 1 semitone apart. You could use the keyboard for this, you know, if you have a little keyboard drawn out, you could use that. But I'm just going to go ahead and just write these notes on. So we've got C, then we've got C sharp, then D, then D sharp. So far so good. E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then C. So that's all okay. This has been written out correctly. They are all just a semitone apart, and they follow the rules that they're supposed to. Correctly written scale beginning on E flat. So, any 3 notes in a row to look for? Nope. Start and end on the same note? Yes. And okay, I guess we got to check through this one as well. Right, E flat down to D. That's okay. Gotta be, I'd probably take your time, especially if you're descending in a tricky clef. A lot of people don't like the bass clef, you know. If it was a treble clef and you were descending, it might be a little nicer, but do take your time. D to D flat, C, so far it's okay, C flat, and then we have a B. So here we have an enharmonic equivalent. We have 2 notes written out differently, that they have different names, but they are the same note. So this is incorrect. You don't want the same note twice. So you're watching out for this happening as well. So this is not correctly written out. This is false. One sneaky thing I've seen that I just want to point out that wasn't actually here in this question. Let's just say, I'm just going to use a little bit of this stave to show you this. So let's say it goes like this. Let's say it went like G flat, for example. And we were moving up the piano. And it said G as my next note. G flat, then G, but my chromatic scale is moving upwards. That looks okay, right? You would maybe read that as a G flat and then a G, and then you'd be on to like A flat, and we're still moving up here. It seems like it's okay, but because that's a G flat, you would need a natural sign on this G here. Otherwise, you're looking at 2 G flats there. That flat takes effect on this note as well. So that would be incorrect if you saw it. Okay, next, 3.7. This is the leading note in B major. So this is just all of your technical names here. The leading note is the 7th note in the scale. So you could just go, well, B major, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. The leading, oops, went to C. The leading note in B major, 7th note, is A. But then you just check. Once you've established whether you have the right note or not, you then have to check, does it have sharps or flats on it in the key? So I would go, right, B major, sharps and flats chart. B major has 5 sharps. One of them is actually A, so that is supposed to be A sharp, and it is. So that is the leading note in B major. check your note, then check your keys always. Subdominant, this is the fourth note, and it wants to know A minor. Is this the fourth note in A minor? So it's an F, an A minor. If we go A, B, C, D, E, well, we haven't even got to F yet, but we've passed the fourth note, so you don't need to check any keys or anything. If it's a wrong note, it's a wrong note. So we're okay, that's just false. Next one, submediant. It's the sixth note, and we've got a D, and it's F sharp minor. So let's see, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so for a minor scale, it might be wise to just actually pop the notes on the scale sometimes. If you do establish that the sixth note is correct, for example, then definitely check your key, but maybe take some extra time to actually write it down. F sharp minor has 3 sharps in it, F, C, and G. And the reason is because of those raised sevenths, they can sometimes cause a problem. So I've added the sharps onto the scale, and my sixth note was not affected by those sharps, and it's supposed to be a D anyway, that's okay. But F sharp minor, because the 6th and the 7th can be raised, then a D sharp would have been okay as well. An E sharp would be okay as well on the 7th note. It just depends. There's a few possibilities on the 6th and the 7th. It doesn't say what type of minor you see. But anyway, D, D, we're okay. True. Question 4, intervals. This is something that a lot of people can really struggle with, and not many seem to find a happy way to deal with them. Some people say that, you can memorize the distance between every single intervals, but you'd have to remember 12 different things there, whereas you can actually figure out any interval using the major scale, and it's a lot easier. So I'm going to show you how to do this my way. It's up to you if you want to use it, but hopefully it can help you out. What you do, take the lowest note from your interval. I'm going to pick one that's a bit closer together to start with to demonstrate, then we can do the larger ones after. So I'm going to zoom in to this one. Right, my lowest note here is a G, right? So G is the note that the G major scale is what I'm going to use to figure this interval out. Okay, let me just write this out up here. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So you check your chart then, see what G major has in it if you're not sure. It has 1 sharp, it's an F sharp. So I'm going to pop that there, and then, right, stay with me here. This might seem a little weird at first, but it's so easy once you know what you're doing. You draw a box around it, and section off the 2nd and 3rd notes, give them a drop down box, and then do the same thing on the other end of the scale, like a mirror image. Give the 2nd to last 2 a drop down as well, right? And what this does, it shows me which intervals from the major scale, because these would be called, for example, major 2nd or major 3rd if they are in the major scale. But if they are lowered 1 semitone, these are the ones that can be called minor as well. So only the ones in these drop down boxes can be called minor. So for example, A lowered 1 would be A flat, B lowered 1 would be B flat. These would be minor 3rds and minor 2nds. Now the reason that these middle 2 don't get the drop down box is because they can't be minor ever. You never get a minor 4th or a minor 5th. And these ones are just called perfect always. So the ones that are left with no drop down box, they are perfect. The others can be major or minor. So then the other intervals, we've covered major, minor, and perfect, but augmented up here, like if any of these are raised by 1 semitone, any of the perfects or the majors, when raised up will immediately become augmented, and the zone down here below this little grid thing is called diminished. So we can see, for example, if you lower a third, if we lower this third, it's major at the moment, then it becomes minor if it's B flat. Then if we take it down another step to B double flat, then it becomes diminished. We've popped outside the box here and we're on diminished. If we take the same approach for F sharp, to lower F sharp would become F. Then it would become F flat if it went into the diminished zone. And what's great about this is we can see that these middle two, the fourth and the fifth, because they don't have the extra drop down box, they immediately become diminished. So it's the same for the fourth and the fifth and the octave. They become diminished straight away. Okay, so using that then, we can figure anything out from here. So like we see that it's a fifth and it's been lowered one semitone, so it's a D, but it's a D flat. It's a diminished fifth. And obviously you will have to draw your major scale out for each one, but if you're confident to draw a major scale out, it literally takes 5 to 10 seconds to draw that out, especially if you have like a little keys chart to use, and it makes intervals just way nicer. So let's have a look. We've got B to E. So B major scale, I have 5 sharps in the B major scale, F, C, G, D, A. And if I just scribble a little box, you don't even have to be neat, as long as you get the right ones. I just do that. Don't have to fill in all the information. I just have to sort of see that there. Now I can see that I've got a fourth, right? So I've got B to E, which is a fourth, but I can see that I'm not just going from this B to this E, I'm going all the way to this one. So I like to bring the B up there, deal with the interval. So this is a fourth, but as you probably know, if you have an interval larger than an octave, we call it a compound fourth in this case. Compound perfect fourth, because it's landed right there on the major scale on the perfect zone or whatever. So compound perfect fourth is the answer for this one. There are alternative names that it could be called. So it could be called compound perfect fourth, or instead of doing the compound thing and adding the fourth on, you may know that you can go straight from this note to this note, count the amount that you've got. It ends up being like, you add 7 onto this number. That's what the distance between these two would be. This would literally be an 11th. So you could either call it a compound perfect fourth or a perfect 11th. So let's have a look. Compound perfect fourth was one of the options, so that was fine. Right, so using that info, I'm just going to go ahead and tackle these ones then. So F is my lowest note, G is my highest note here. So scale of F major, let's go. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Got a B flat in F major, draw my box around it, draw my extra boxes. I can see that F to G falls into the major scale. This is a type of major interval. It's a second, but it's above an octave. So it's a compound major second or major ninth. Major ninth. And I knew it was ninth because I added 7 onto this number. Second, I added 7 onto it to get that. You can do that, or you can just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, here we don't need to count much. We just need to know the type of interval. We don't really even need to know the number. We don't need to at least answer the number. What is this? D. D to F. D and F. D major scale is what I'm using. D, E, F, G, A, C, D. D major has 2 sharps in it. Draw our box. Okay, D to a normal F, not an F sharp, a normal F. So it's been lowered a semitone into the minor zone. So I know this is larger than an octave. I know it's something compound, something, something, but you don't have to worry about it. It's just minor because it's there, so minor. B flat to G. So B flat major scale. B flats and E flats are in this scale. Okay, so then we have, it's G, it's a regular G, it's in the major bit, it's just major. Move on. F sharp to E flat. So this one, you can alter this note if you want to make it a little bit easier. Like if you have something that you're not super familiar with, like F sharp major, yeah, that information, I do have that in this chart. I could just go ahead and draw an F sharp major scale out with 6 sharps in it if I was nuts. Or I could just go, right, I'm going to lower this sharp down. I'm going to change this note into a note that I'm comfy with instead. So what I could do, I'm going to zoom in. I could lower this sharp. I could just make that a normal F instead. But whatever I do to this note, if I do change it, I have to make sure that I do the same thing to this one. And that doesn't mean make it a normal B. That means I lowered this by 1 semitone. So I have to lower this by 1 semitone as well. So I would have to make that E double flat. So what I would do here, that makes it easier, doesn't it? You've got F and then you've got E double flat. What the point is the F major scale is much nicer to draw out than the F sharp major scale. So F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so I add my key signature note. I draw my boxes. And then I can see that it's not a normal E. It's been lowered not once, but twice. And it means that it's diminished. Bit easier to deal with. Drawing intervals. Again, same approach. I know this is a lot of drawing out scales, but I don't know, if you have an easier way, let me know. Compound perfect fifth. So this is a C sharp. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. What's in C sharp major? Everything. Yay. Okay. Well, that's easy, really. You just got to sharpen everything. Time consuming, but you do get 2 hours to do this, so. Compound perfect fifth. Well, I've got to be larger than an octave. So first of all, I've got to take a mental note that it's going to be a fifth from this thing here. So my note that I'm going to draw is actually here. A fifth from that one. So there's where my note goes. Now I can deal with what symbol I need. If it's a perfect fifth, it's just going to be in this line here on the fifth. That's where my perfect is. Fine. Okay, so this says minus 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's where my note goes. You might just know the B flat minor scale and you could sort of do that, but B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, B flat major is what I'm using to figure this out because you can easily see the minor intervals from it, as we know. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, minus 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It would have to be A flat. Lowered 1 semitone. Augmented 12th. Yay. Right. We have a C. That's nice. So C major. Okay, so then augmented 12th. For this one, I'm just going to count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's a G. And if I need it to be augmented, I can see that this just needs a sharp. Okay. Right then, G is my lowest note. So I'm going to write G major out. G major has F sharp in. Didn't need that because I'm actually only using this little portion of it here, but you know, good practice. So it's a third, it's a B that I need, but minor third. We have to lower it to this little minor box, flat. Question 5 is all about chords. So for this one, this very first question, they don't give you the key. You have to figure that out. So in this case, key signature is a sharp. We don't have any extra sharps in here, so it doesn't appear to be a minor key or anything. So we can safely say that this is just G major. And then what you should do is write down a little grid of all the chords that are in G major. So hopefully this is clear enough. Chord 1, 2, 4, and 5. And in G major, chord 1 would be G, B, D. If it helps, you can write down the scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I've written my sharp in, but you don't actually have to in this. You can kind of leave the sharps. It doesn't really help you with chords questions to even bother with the key signature notes. I just do anyway because it's a habit. So chord 2, A, C, and E. Chord 4, C, E, and G. Chord 5, D, F sharp, and A. Okay, once you've done that, you can take a look at the notes within the bracket, write them down, or just say them, or whatever works for you. And then we can see A, E, D, and C. If we have a look over here, well, most of the notes there are in this chord, aren't they? A, C, and E is our chord. Chord 2. Let's get rid of that. The D is just considered what we call a passing note. Fundamentally, this is like a chord 2 because it's got A, E, and C in, but composers can obviously add extra notes in that aren't in the chord. Typically, they'll sort of like connect these two together. It's like the journey from this note to this note has just been sort of like filled in with what we call a passing note. Anyway, next we've got D and F, or F sharp if you want to be pedantic. Okay, D's and F sharp are in this chord down here, chord 5. We've got B, G, D. Not in the same order, but we can see that that is just a chord 1, G, B, D. C's, E's, D's, C's, G's. Again, we have a little sneaky passing note in here, but fundamentally we just have C, E, G, chord 4. And then G, B, D again, or B, D, G. So again, another chord 1. Question 5.2 is going to be chords still, but it's about cadences now, specifically. So it's still going to be the same approach as before. You're still going to need that little grid, like what we just drew previously, except now our key is D major, and they're kind enough to tell you that now, so that's cool. 1, 2, 4, and 5. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. You might not need this stuff, like if you're quite familiar with chords in general. Maybe you're a keyboardist and you really like if you know your keys, and the chords might just pop out at you, but if you do need something to figure it out, this is the way to go. So before we had, on the previous question, it was just like single notes to to pick from and sort of pick what chord. But here we have to look at the notes in the bass clef and the treble clef, which ones are stacked up on top of each other, because all of the notes are not being played one after the other, they're being played in harmony in like a chord all together. So we've got A, let me change pen, doesn't stand out very well, A, E, and C. Doesn't matter about the key signature right now. Let's just see what notes these are. We've got C's, E's, and A's. This is just a chord 5, okay? So then you want to make a note of that, chord 5. And then this one here is D, A, F, D, chord 1. So we have a 5 to 1 progression, and this is perfect. Okay, F major next. Do our little grid. And we want F as our first one, G as our second, B, C. Okay, then we have B's, F's, and D's. We can see that this is just a chord 4 here. And then we've got F, A, F, C, chord 1. So we're going 5 to 1, 4 to 1. I wrote that wrong. Yeah, it's unlikely to be the same answer again. So yeah, that made me twig. No, I'm making this worse. Okay, cool. 4 to 1, play go. And then finally, for your chord stuff, you've got one last key to write your chords out with. Now for this one, it's absolutely crucial for me to write this stuff down, because you not only have to identify the chord, you also have to identify the inversion as well. So the order that these chords are in actually matters. So chord 1, 2, 4, and 5 for C minor. Again, we don't even need to write the key signature notes on here. You can kind of just skip it. C, D, E, F. Please don't shout at me, music theory purists who want me to write the key signature notes on. I'm just trying to save some time and brain ache. A, B, C. So I've written A, B, and C along the top now, because depending on what note the chord begins on will depend on what you're going to call it over here. So, right, let's have a look. We're looking at chord A. G, E, G, and C. G, E, G, C are the chords, right? So are the notes rather. So I've got, blatantly we've got a chord 1, some kind of a chord 1, but then you just have to look, what is the lowest note? That's the important one. Whatever note you're beginning with at the bottom is going to be the arrangement. So like this is beginning on a G, so we call this a chord 1 because of the notes we've got, but it's a chord 1 C because of the lowest note is a G, right? So it's a 1 C. Then we've got A, C, F, C, A, C, F, C. So it's some kind of an chord 4, and it's beginning on an A at the bottom. So this is a chord 4 B that we have here. And then the last one here, we have G, B, D, G. So we do have a chord 5, and it's beginning on a G. So this is a nice simple chord 5A because we're beginning on a G at the bottom. 5A. On to the term signs and instruments stuff. Morendo means dying away. There are a scary amount of terms that mean dying away. I feel like 1 or 2 would suffice, but I'm sure there are like 4 that I know of. But anyway, dying away. And I guess this part of the word, like, I'm sure something like mort is like death, isn't it, in some languages. But yeah, there you go. Largamente. I remember this one because large, broadly, I guess. Yeah, there you go. Mesto. This one rhymes with the word pesto. So pesto, I don't like pesto. Pesto makes me sad. So mesto means sad. Yep. Okay, ornaments next. This, the sort of pattern, what's going on here, you can see lots of alternating notes. Typically 8 notes if it's a trill, roughly. So trill. And if you see a trill, it's TR, or like lots of squiggly lines like this, and that kind of looks like what the notes are actually doing, doesn't it? It's like a little visual representation of that. Next we've got these notes in question here, these in the bracket. So that notice they're going like up, down and back, and that little movement actually kind of looks like the symbol as well. This is a turn, and this is the symbol for a turn. Up a turn, because we're going up first, then down. And then we have some instruments questions. So like the ornaments, this is just going to be, you have to revise this stuff really to know. Like the terms, this whole section, terms, signs, instruments, ornaments, all that stuff is just a case of you going away and swatting up on it really. Alright. The flute plays at a higher pitch than the bassoon. Well, if you know your instruments, you'll know that the flute is one of the highest. The bassoon is actually lowest in the woodwind family, so yeah, that is true. The trumpet is a woodwind instrument. Definitely not. Cymbals produce sounds of definite pitch. Definite pitch means it produces a note. So all instruments pretty much produce definite pitch. You hear a C or a D when you actually play the instrument, but when you play drums or any sort of like anything that goes with drums, cymbals or whatever, you don't hear a note. You just hear like a, well, indefinite pitch is what they call it. Drums have indefinite pitch. There is one drum that has definite pitch, and you can tune it up, called a timpani, and you do have to know that. That's like one of the things that they do tend to ask you. The horn uses a double reed. Okay, that is a bit of a weird question, because horn, there are 2 types of horn. There's a French horn, which is brass, doesn't use a reed at all. Then there's a cor anglais, which is an English horn, and that is a woodwind instrument, and it does use a double reed. So I guess they're not being very specific, but the answer would be true for this one, because there is a type of horn that does use a double reed. Just, yeah. Okay, so then mezzo-soprano voice has a lower range than a soprano voice. Finally, music in context section, you have to look at this piece of music and answer some questions about it. So let's see. 7.1, it's just another question about, like, from the pitch section, to do with which one has been written out correctly, like your octaves. This is testing out your octaves again. So again, let's draw the middle C points for all of these. I know that when you do the online exam, you can't physically draw because you're going to be doing this on a screen, but just so that you can visualize them here with me. Okay, we're comparing which bar? Bar 2. So let's have a look. I hope this is not too zoomed out for you. Bar 2, right hand part. Alright, so let's have a look. This one is 1 octave lower than this one. So that's minus an octave. This one is 2 octaves lower. You can see that this has had to move 2 octaves before it got below middle C like this. It's minus 2 octaves. This one here is the same as this one, 2 octaves lower. Okay, now I've got that info, I can just sort of have a look here. Only A is correctly written an octave lower. Boom. Great. 7.2, the beginning of the music should be played lightly. So this is probably going to have a word, yep, right at the very beginning. Legerio, I think you say it like, it does mean lightly. So that is true. The music ends on the subdominant or the 4th chord of F sharp minor. Next question, the music ends on the subdominant chord of F sharp minor, and this is talking about a 4th chord. So if we're talking about chords again, just like we did previously in our chords section, I'm going to go ahead and draw the chords out. Now just because we're at the end of an exam here, and the last few questions, we don't want to fall at the last hurdle and just like sloppily answer this question and go, oh yeah, F sharp minor 4th chord. Just because we're not in a chord section, we're going to still treat this very much like a chord question and take all the same protocols as you would G. F, G, A, B, C, E, G. And then we're going to check it. So it ends on the subdominant chord, does it? Let's have a look. Treble and bass clef, we've got C, we've got E, G, C, C, E, G. So this is a chord 5, which, if you know your technical names, it's a dominant chord, not a subdominant chord. This is false. The largest melodic interval of the left-hand part of bar 7 is a major third. Okay. Left-hand part of bar 7, largest melodic interval. You know what? Let's just get bar 7 and bring it over here, because I am done scrolling. So what's it saying? Okay. So, of course there are a bunch of thirds here. Of course there are. Right, let's see. Oh, well that was useless because I need to know my key signature. 3 sharps. I'm just going to pop them in. I know you can't do this on the day. It will all be much easier to navigate than my computer. 3 sharps. Alright, so I'm looking for intervals here of a third. There's a third. There's a third. There's one. So I just have to check here to see if the largest melodic interval melodic just means, it sounds fancy. Melodic means that the notes are one after the other, that's all. If we were discussing these 2 notes and comparing these 2 as an interval, that would be called a harmonic interval because the notes are stacked up on top of one another rather than separated. So that's all melodic means. Don't be sort of thrown off by that word or worry about it. So these are all of our thirds. So I have, first, let's do this one. Let's just do F sharp to A. Okay, so major third it's asking me about. F sharp is my lowest note. F sharp to A. So F, G sharp. If I check the key of F sharp major, Right, so what you could do here, you could go and check intervals in the same way that we did earlier. Or you could, so what you could do is you could go and check all of these intervals out individually like we did for the intervals section. Or you could figure out what is the distance between two notes if they are a major third apart. And that's because it's a small interval, it's not too hard to figure out. Pick an easy scale, like C major, and figure out, like the major third would be C to E, wouldn't it? So on your little piano keyboard thingy up here, you could just have a look at the distance between C to E, and you would see that, well, there's my C, and you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. So just by sort of figuring out the distance between these two notes, I've established that a major third is 4 semitones in its distance. So let's have a look then. I'm looking for an interval that is 4 semitones apart, and it can't be any bigger because the question is the largest interval. So if I just name these notes then, I've got A and F sharp. If I counted from one to the other, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. I'm just sort of imagining the keyboard in my head. F sharp, G, G sharp, A. 1. Don't imagine it. Find your keyboard and use it. I'm getting lazy. I told you not to get lazy. I'm getting lazy. F sharp. 1, 2, 3, right? To get to A, how much easier was that, for goodness sake, right? So we can see that that isn't 4 semitones, so it's not quite as big as a major third. Right, let's have a look. And we've got F sharp and D as our two notes, so D to F sharp. Let's have a look. D, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a major third. This is 4 semitones. So far, a major third is the largest interval. The last one to check is B to D. Okay, I'll delete a few things to make some space. B to D. There's our B. 1, 2, 3, and we have not quite a major third there. So the largest interval was a major third. So much effort for 1 point. That's so mean. The highest note in the music is a C sharp. Let's have a look. Oops. Got rid of my bar now, haven't I? I'm going to put that back and pretend it never happened. Yep, this is kind of what it's like to be in my lessons sometimes. I can be a little bit scattered, but that's alright. Oosh. See, good as new for that. Right then, the highest note, I've forgotten the question. Highest note in the music is a C sharp. Let's see. Just scan across the top for the highest note. So 2 ledger lines at this point is my highest. I have, this is now my highest note here, this D. Keep going. Oop. Nope. Just above 2 ledger lines, so actually a D here, that is our highest note. So that was false. Okay, and then the music gets quieter in bar 7, so we're looking for some kind of little direction here. Quieter in bar 7. Well, in bar 7 it actually says crescendo, so definitely not. In fact, it says crescendo molto, crescendo very much, so no. No, it doesn't. It's a lie. Which instrument is best suited to play the right hand phrase in bars 3 to 4? Okay, 3 to 4, right hand, so that it sounds at the same pitch. So this is kind of, again, knowing your instruments here. Bars 3 to 4. So we can see that this is pretty much just a nice treble clef range that we're looking for. So an instrument that plays treble clef notes then is what we're after. Well, bassoon is bass. It's in the name, for God's sake. Trombone, bass. Double, bass. No, oboe. Oboes are only one. Mediant. How many times does the mediant note in the key of F sharp minor appear in the left hand? Right. Okay. Come on then. Let's have it. F sharp minor. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. F sharp minor, if you check your chart information, you would see that it has 3 sharps in it, F, C, and G. So I'm going to throw them in. F, C, G. Don't forget the first and last are the same. Mediant note, third note. So I'm looking for A's then. Okay, I'm looking for how many times does an A appear in the left hand part. Fun. Okay, A. Check all the octaves, by the way. So, because I've established that there are A's here, I just like to scan across this line to see if I can see any more. There's one. Top line in the bass clef, because in the bass clef, good burritos don't fall apart. So yeah, good burritos don't fall apart. A. And I'm going to check the lower A's in case there are any, or any higher A's. I always need to like double, sometimes even triple check this because it likes to trick me. I think I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. I'm saying 6. Could be 6. I think it's 6. How many times is the... Oh, okay, when I was creating this little thing onto paint, when I kind of, you can pretend that's not there, I didn't do that. Yeah, I duplicated that question. So, 7.5, complete the 2 following sentences. Bar 3 has the same rhythm and articulation as bar something. So bar 3 is what we're looking at, and rhythm is obviously the notes, their values. Articulation is anything to do with like a symbol that changes the way that you play a note. So this could be pedal markings, it could be accents, it could be slurs, staccatos, all this stuff. So we're looking for all of that, and we're going to cross-reference it against another bar, bar 3. Bar 3. Rhythms and articulation. What has the same rhythm and articulation as this bar? Okay. It doesn't have to be the same notes, it just has to be the same rhythm. So first I'll check the right hand, 4 semiquavers, and then quiver, semiquaver, semiquaver. Okay, I'm seeing the same rhythm here in the previous bar. Semiquavers, quaver, 2 semiquavers. Then I need to check the articulation. Slurs, they're the same. Staccato, they are both the same. And then we have a slur here. Okay, and then the left hand, we have staccato quavers to start the bar. And then we have a little accented chord to finish the bar. And yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah. Okay, so it's bar 2. Bar 2. Where are you, bar 2? Oosh. Diminuendo in bar something. It might present itself as this word. It might say diminuendo. It might say dim with a dot. Or it might simply have a little hairpin decrescendo-y looking thingy. There it is. Bar 5. Okay, so bar 5 is our final answer. And, oh, now we can go chill. Right, that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe. If you have any tips or tricks of your own, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. Good luck in your exam.